Here we are, we're live. It's the BetaSaaSers AutoGraders, something or other meeting. Sam and Richard here so far. I think we both just woke up. I had me from my afternoon nap, and Richard from his usual repose, I presume. And that's because you used to tell me that you didn't eat anything during the day, and like you only had stuff.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the times I won't.
Yeah,
But I'll eat a lot at night.
right. But do you have a normal? Well, I say normal. What's your sleep pattern? Are you like get 8 hours every night, or how does it work?
Well, I mean, only when I'm lucky, when I don't have stuff to get up for, and otherwise I get about 4 or 5.
Oh,
What
okay.
happens is I'm not a morning person, so I'll stay up
No.
late, and I have to get up. The days that I teach, I get up at 5:30, and I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
particularly go to sleep that much earlier. So I make it up.
Right, right. Yeah, I kind of have to get myself down early because I just function very, very poorly on lack of sleep. But Rose is here. Hello, Rose. How are you doing?
Hi, how are you, Sam?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you doing?
And
Yeah?
Richard. Hi, Richard. How you doing?
Doing well.
All right. Here we go. Yes. Well, here we are in our new time slot that I am now like very clear about when it is. And until the clocks change in a couple of weeks, then it'll be smooth sailing until then. And then there will be the usual confusion and gnashing of microphones. Rose, I think you're just sort of settling yourself. Richard, did you have some items for the agenda today?
No, not overly. I'm actually, if you look, I'm scanning through some stuff. My main issue, I would say, is that I assigned homework 3 for real. Sorry, the Ruby. This is a struggle for me. I'll get there. I assigned Sinatra Hang Person for real, and I mentioned that. And what has been happening the last few days and hard this weekend, because I said, get it done before class, the next class. But then I said, I'll give you through the weekend. Well, things. A bunch of messages came over the weekend. It's hard to tell how, when you have 150 students, you see a flurry of messages. It could be 2 or 3 or 4 people having issues, right? In some ways. I mean, there's a few more than that, but and many of them were their own issues. So I'm just trying to get a handle. That's what I was trying to get a sense of what issues are, and having done this for the first time, when students have problems, it's not totally clear to me. When you
totally
get a sense of things, and especially now we're looking at like some of those AutoGrader messages and trying to, sometimes we have to look at the code and all that, but a lot of the times when you have some experience, you can interpret what those messages are. And I guess the AutoGrader, I haven't looked at it or pointed my TAs to it, but I guess the AutoGrader is coming out of the AutoGrader code is coming out of the GitHub, right? That's the way these AutoGraders are working now.
That's not yet how they're working. That's that there's a proposal that they should.
Oh no, I'm not saying the student submissions. I'm saying the actual AutoGrader
specs.
Tests.
Yeah,
the
specs that the grader is running against the student's code are coming out of Git.
Yeah. So if we have some issues, we haven't had a need to look at them yet for exactly what's going on. But again, one of the things that I will say without a lot of backing is that the AutoGrader error messages for that being sort of a little bit of an introductory assignment for submitting to Heroku and all that kind of thing can be confusing to students, because students will assume all sorts of things when they see failures.
Oh, totally. I think that's true across the board. So maybe should we leave you? I mean, you might want to continue scanning those messages, and you might come up with something more specific.
Yeah.
For us to look up. So we go to Rose. Rose, do you have some?
Hi.
I know you mentioned I know you've got one big thing.
Yeah, I have.
What are the?
Yeah, I have a number of issues. I had to restart my computer a couple times. I'm having some issues. at some point I might have to restart it again because I'm getting, I'm like, I can hear you guys, but I'm getting a blank screen here, so that's not good. All right, so I have a question about the Rails introductory walkthrough. It says about restarting the server. Can't we just reload the page?
I think that depends. Can we be specific about what, when we say the Rails introductory walkthrough, we mean the chapter 4 of the textbook?
No, I'm sorry. I'm referring to your opinionated walkthrough, which is
okay.
extraordinarily thorough and nice.
Oh, lovely. So on the Rails intro assignment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
because I mean, I know Sinatra, you have to restart the server every time, but I thought with Rails it was just reload the page.
Yes, it often is that there are some circumstances where you do need to restart, such as when you've included a new gem. I don't know if that's I don't recall off the top of my head where I
I just noticed. I just noticed that several times you say restart the server, and we're not adding gems. So I'm just
finding it here. Let's have a look here. So first we update the view. Yeah, no, that's interesting. In principle, when it's just a change to the that's part 2, and I'm saying after we update the view, and then I say restarting the server. I think that might just be a mistake on my part, unless there was something I've forgotten that was happening specific to C9, and it wasn't restarting for me. Where we end up at the end of section 1. We've deployed it. I think that maybe reflects the fact that I wasn't seeing the changes update.
Oh, really?
On C9 at one point.
Okay.
But yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking at that there, one shouldn't, like, I guess we're looking at this part 2 here, and now we're saying we need to add this Haml text to it. Yeah, I would have thought that would appear automatically. Interesting. So that makes
are you sure you saved the file at that point?
Well, I assume so. I mean, I'm very aware that Rails normally changes to views and indeed models and controllers would automatically be updated. Yeah.
One would think. Okay. Well, I'm just checking on a few little things because we're going to do a postmortem today on the Rails homework. So I wanted to be kind of sure about everything. And I had a question also about your ensure params consistency method. Okay, and so if there is nothing in the ratings params, if ratings params is nil, then you're putting it together using the hash all ratings product one keys. By the way, I'm curious. I mean, that hash that's created, it's created and then thrown away?
I think we would need first, for my brain to catch up, can you direct me to a particular part of the assignment that we're, like, this, again, we're referring to Rails intro, and we're talking about, let me open another thing here. You were talking specifically about something to do with the require params, so it's like...
So the homework Rails intro walkthrough part 3 that you put together. Okay.
So part 3, I'm just putting that up. So part 3.
So in part 2, I'm sorry, I digress. In part 2, you have selected ratings is assign the value of params ratings or hash all ratings product one keys. And I'm just curious, you're creating a hash and then you're throwing it away?
Yes, quite possibly.
Okay, because it seems like you're only keeping the keys, and I was curious why go through all that if you're just going to keep the keys.
I think that my memory of it is that the reason that we're doing this is related to the way in which the data comes in from the params.
Oh, the data comes in as a hash, right? But you know, you're only saving it as a hash, it appears. If there is something in the ratings, it says params ratings or and then you create the hash and just set it to the keys.
Yes, and so
which is not.
Yeah, what this is, I think what this is managing, like this is managing the quite relative, like that is done in, for example, the example solution in a much more complex and convoluted piece of logic.
Yes, in convoluted way. Yes,
it's managing the fact that we've got the session and the params and the way in which they might interact with each other. So we've got.
Okay, but what I'm saying is you're saving only the keys.
Yeah.
Selected ratings in one case is a hash. Selected ratings in the other case is an array.
Well, I think what we're doing, we're doing that in order to break up and manipulate the code. And I mean, if I can get there in the debugger, I could show you the details of what we do that if I get into it.
Okay.
So I guess rather than diving into each, so this is the Rails introductory walkthrough. We have one issue which is about the need for restarting server. There's another one that we've got here, which is you know, Sam's particular solution involving hash/array,
which leads to another question about restfulness.
About restfulness, right?
Okay, so I mean, this is like part one of my question, and then we've got the homework 4 stuff. I'm trying to talk very quickly because, like I said, I would like to kind of see what you have, but I can't see anything right now, and I might have to restart again.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm not showing anything now other than taking notes on what you're saying and just bringing up the code that you're referring to. What I would say is, why don't you do that restart so that perhaps we can share screens? I'll log into my test instance so we can sort of explore the code dynamically, and we can drop back to Richard and see if he has some other things that we do while you're restarting.
I'm sorry about this. I'm really sorry.
No problem. This is life in the early 21st century. I'm sure by 2020 we'll have fixed this you know, teleconferencing stuff, so it just works perfectly.
Yeah. All right. So I'll be right back.
No worries, Rose.
I'll be right back.
Sure thing. So yeah, Richard, in the background there, are you now getting a sense of thousands of screening students, or it's just one or two who are like, you know?
Oh no, just not major. My issue is more that is my ability to help most of them, and I'm a little I tend to be very conservative, so I think I know what's wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm not as I don't like to shoot from the hip, but I'm not able to.
I thought you're American. I don't. All Americans like to shoot from that. Isn't that the kind of that's on the flag now?
I have that from my.
Change the flag to have the hip shooting thing as part of it instead of the stars. No, sorry. Anyway, go on.
I have my students and TAs and all that. You know, willing to shoot from the hip in terms of their.
Yeah, you got to counterbalance that. No, I understood.
Right, and in fact, my TA. Well, okay. We're being recorded. But they are not the TAs last year were like just jumping on things, and I'm not quite sure. I think they're not as available on the weekends and so on.
Right.
The thing that I put in the chat is Chapter 4 walkthrough, which reminded me when Rose was sort of starting up her question, that is just running and building the Rotten Potatoes app from scratch, right, in Chapter 4. Was there a recording or anything of that that was done?
Conceivably, I'm almost certain that I have done a recording of that at some point.
And that might be a video rather than, I mean, if it's just anything, anything that you recollect.
Also working towards having a text walkthrough of that, as that was something that was kind of requested as well. Let me just have a quick look what we can find here. So we've got in here our instructor community resources, which has the video walkthroughs, and that has here. Let's have those as Rails intros. No videos of those. And we've got here. I mean, I think we've got no the ones there. Chapter. So I think we've got here. That's a docx of. That's from Stacy, chapter 4 walkthrough.
Okay.
In doc format there.
Okay.
I mean, I'll just pop that in the.
I remember that. I mean, that's why I hadn't thought of that. It just popped into my head, and it was like that could be useful even for the TAs. I will be assigning that this week.
Yeah, and I kind of it also reminds me. Oh, wasn't that? Oh, it has. It's reminding me of. Was there a place that was it even in the? Was it actually? I have a feeling that actually in the textbook site itself, no, really? That's strange. Well, what have we done with the? This was a song. I thought we had. I thought we had that. Okay, right, there we go. Right, it's there. So the Strawberry Canyon thing. I had started to make, I thought, like a chapter 4 walkthrough, and like I put it in the book repository. It might take me a while to find that, but I can certainly try and dig it out. I don't know that I finished it. I think we were kind of all agreeing that that would be a good thing to have.
Well, and I would say, if you're able to find anything like that, even after the video, I would be curious. And if it's not finished, that's all fine. It just may, like I said, it may help as one additional reference.
Yeah.
And I'll look at.
Yeah, I mean, we are talking about moving to a second edition of the book, and I think, you know, in parallel with that, what we want is for all chapters, we want, you know, a stripped down version as well that contains just the code, you know, with like minimal theory, as it were, would be potentially very valuable. Okay, cool. Well, Rose is back there. I mean, it sounds like your Sinatra thing is under control, Richard. You were sort of mentioning your relative lack of familiarity.
What I intended to do.
If you have any questions about that assignment and ways in which we could help, we're all ears. But it sounds like you've got it. You're okay.
And I may email if necessary. I have my grandchild here for a sleepover, so I didn't get as much prep time last night and this morning as I was hoping.
No worries. No worries at all. All right. So Rose is back. How are the visuals, Rose?
Oh, finally. I mean, I was really, I couldn't even boot my computer back up.
Oh dear.
It just, I don't know. There's some weird stuff going on lately where sometimes it gets a little glitchy. And when it did come up, all my visuals were upside down. I had to reboot it again.
Wow.
So I'm good now.
Okay.
I'm sorry it took so long.
Hey, no problem at all.
It knows we're having a meeting, you know, so it deliberately misbehaves about 15 minutes before.
It's emotionally sensitive. The higher your state of emotional
exactly.
activation.
Exactly.
So totally. So yeah, if we go back to, I mean, so I've got the, if you can see my screen, I've got the Cloud9.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
Up and running here, and we could just go and check. So this is, we're dealing with the Rotten Potatoes Rails intro. Now, of course, this instance is, should be available. If you just guys just go to this repo here, you can get full access to this. If you don't have access, I can grant you access to it. I'll just
no, I was talking about your walkthrough.
Yeah, but the walkthrough is based on all the code for the walkthrough is from here. Like I wrote the code out in here and made the walkthrough from it. So if we have a question about the code,
so
for
when
example,
I uncheck blah blah blah,
so let's just
rating.
If we I'm just going to go, so addressing the first question, which is like about the need for restarting. So I'm just going to get inside here, and I'm going to go and get the, what were we doing? I need the text, which is here. No, it isn't. What I want is this is the walkthrough assignment here. This is the one we're looking at. So we were looking at, let's get this is the code that we want to run the Rails server, which we can get into maximize there. I think everywhere I sit is going to be in the way here. Let's go up there. So I'm going to run that, and then let's we got the preview thing, and we can preview the running application, and we can jump down to a different window, and we can go and see that there. Yay! So we have rotten potatoes, and yes, I very much suspect that that was just excessive on my, but we go and have a look at, for example, the index here, and we go all movies in the world, and we'll make some changes there. And
right. Yeah.
And I'll reload the page, and it will change.
Yeah, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's just an error in my walkthroughs, and I'll remove that on my next run through.
Yeah, not a problem.
You could remove that yourself. So then the other question.
I just wanted to nail down that I wasn't crazy.
Well, I think I can. Well, of course, I'm not a qualified medical professional, so I can't speak to that directly. So moving on. But so yeah, if we look at now here, this is all after I've done. This is like at the very end of the walkthrough after I've done the refactoring.
Yeah.
But maybe we can see in here. Yeah, so we can look at this selected ratings situation here. And so what I'm tempted to do is come in here and so have a look at the...
No, I mean, I can see what's happening. I'm just asking you why.
Right. Well, and in order for me to answer the question of why, I have to get my brain hooked on the debugger in order to explain it. And this is, I think, some of the... I don't know if this reflects how you feel about when you work with many of your students. Or I often think, like, I get the sense that the people I talk to think that all this stuff is in my head, and it's not. I entirely rely on Google and all these things to actually work. So, you know, I store as little information in my brain as possible, as my wife will attest. What we'll do here, so this is about selected ratings. I will now change this rating selection. We'll remove PG-13, and I'll hit refresh there.
But the case I'm concerned about is the case when you start and there's nothing checked. Okay,
sure. Well, I'm just coming in here even to refresh my mind on what this code is doing. So we can look at all the different cases. So we've come in here. So I've got here. This is after. I'm just even right. So I've refactored this subsequently so that we just have a single method that at the end of having ensured all of the consistency.
Yeah, I like that.
We do selected ratings. So here at this point, we should probably see. I'm just looking here. So the session itself is currently this. Right, so it
has the
hash there. So what we're doing, and then if we have a look here at, so obviously in this case, since we have a session, this bit wouldn't fire. But so if we do this, we take all ratings and we do product with a 1 there, is we get an array of arrays.
And then hash in front of that makes a hash out of that.
It does. So what that does.
So you would have
So what that does is right, is that the session ratings here comes in as a hash,
right?
But the thing that we pass to the where is it? We're going to pass it to the movie. We don't want a hash. Like the thing that we have to pass to movie, I think, is just a list of an array.
Okay, wait a minute. I just saw. All right, so I didn't see where the left paren was. Okay, so in either case, you're sending it just the keys, but in one case, you're creating the hash and then throwing it away. Okay. So you're being consistent. That makes sense. So now that answers my one question. My next question is, okay, when you first start up, there's no params set, there's no session set, and so you have to populate the selected ratings. Right. And populating that is not the same as making a change that you don't get from the params. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not describing this well. So if you don't get all the information you need from the params, like for instance, when you have to stuff the params hash with what you remembered from the session hash, you do a redirect because you didn't get all the information.
Yeah. Or well,
right?
So I've got here actually it's my second. Well, if we step through, and I mean I think it's an open question whether my code is any better or worse than the example solution with its 20-line method. So
I think your code is much better, but I'm just asking a question about
flattery will get you absolutely everywhere. But anyway, and this is not to explain to you, but partly also to refresh into my brain and to sort of for Richard's benefit. Like if we step through what we're doing is that we're first of all we're just getting what are all the ratings that are possible, so that we've got that for reference, and we actually need to display that I think in a form, which is one. Anyway, so then we go for ensure session consistency, and so we come in here and we basically say that, and this is still rather messy, isn't it? But so we say if we've got incoming ratings through the parameters, and that there is nothing in the session, or the session and the params are different, then we will override the session with the current params.
Exactly. So I mean, it's update if changed, basically.
Yeah. So basically,
we basically if it changed.
Yeah, we
basically. But what I'm asking about. Okay.
Sure. You're on the next one, but I was going to keep on going through and hopefully come to the point that you're.
Yeah. Okay. It's just I don't think you're understanding my question.
Okay.
But go ahead.
Okay. So then we've got ensure the params consistency. So this has done the same thing for the ratings and sort, and it's basically we are making sure that if there are params that we don't have session, and if there's any difference, that the params will override the session. And then we have ensure params consistency. So this is the one specifically for the RESTful state. So now we say basically in the case, we're doing return unless. So so that means that we'll do this following thing in these cases. So in the case that we have a session and there's nothing in the params.
And there's nothing in the params. You have to stop it.
Yeah. So in this case, what it means we have some data we have some particular set of params that the user previously specified.
Right.
They are in the cookies now, but they are not in the incoming URL. And so in order to make sure that what the user sees in the page matches the URL that they have in the address bar, then in that case, if there is some missing params, we will redirect to a version of the page that has explicitly those session things in the params of the URL. Right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. But again, my question is.
Yep.
So it's not regarded in the same light when you get no param set and then you set all of the ratings. That's not looked at as
so you just
like you're not getting all your parameter information when you do that. So I just wanted to talk about, like, can you explain to me why in that case you wouldn't like set the session to save all those settings and then stuff the information, and then from that point on, the session would contain all the ratings.
So I think Richard's dealing with his grandchild. We'll just mute him there.
I'm sorry?
I think Richard was just dealing with his cat or his grandchild attacking him. So we'll just mute him.
Right. A child picked up a knife. I'm sorry.
Oh my God! Yes. Oh.
It's okay.
So Rose, I think I understand what you're saying, but what I'm going to try and do here is write out what it was that I thought you were saying, and then you can confirm it for me. So you were saying in the case where there's no params set, so that means it's like the URL has no params.
Right.
Okay. And what was that? What was the and? So when the URL has no params.
Okay. So the session is nil also. The session is nil also.
Is also nil.
Well, when we first start out.
Okay, yeah, so the session is nil. Okay, first starting out, the session is nil and the params are nil. Yes.
And then we set the selected ratings to be all the keys.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So that's not something that would require redirect?
Well,
because we didn't get the information.
Right. Well, that's an interesting point in that we've got the default setup for the I'm going to remove the by bug, but So the default setup for all of this is
Yeah.
that everything is selected when you land on the page. So I guess I see what you're saying. So if we go and look at, for example, if we reload the page. So now in this circumstance, I mean, it's now remembered the session or
with
whatever.
nothing, with
right. But so in this
with nothing checked.
Like, so if we go to, I guess we've got the movies there. I mean, I will have to now let me go and delete the session.
I know it's a nit, but it's just the very.
No, I know what you're saying. We're looking for consistency. That's fine. No, it's making sense.
I'm trying to understand what the restfulness part of this. Like,
yeah, totally.
That is it just goes the one way but not the other way? You know what I'm saying?
I think in general you should probably assume inconsistency on mine and Armando's part. It's trying to look for complete consistency can be painful. For some reason I'm not. Why can't I find the I want to? Oh, here we go. I found right. So if I just get rid of if it will let me, why can't I delete the? So I've got run uploaded session there, which I want to delete. Oh, can I delete it like that? Well, I've deleted all the cookies. Okay, that might not log me in again. Let's reload that again. Okay, yeah. Open the app. Okay, so in this situation, right, and it's still given me ratings there.
Now it has them all checked.
It has them all checked, and it also has them on here. But I don't know that. I mean, I did just delete all of the cookies.
Okay, but this is the case where none of them are checked.
Oh, in the case where
there is no session. Okay,
so hold on. So here, if I come to movies and we open the app.
Yeah.
So I think that this is what I was expecting here. We have this situation here with movies where you land on the page, and we've been asked that the default situation is that all these things are checked. So I guess if you were going to be really specific about saying, I want every conceivable endpoint to be totally restful, we should, in this case, have all of the ratings specified. And I think that but in the assignment itself, it told us to ignore the situation with no ratings specified. Like if I try and refresh that, it resets them all.
Well,
right. So I think, I mean, I think you're right. I think for a purely like restful thing, this movie's endpoint should correspond to a situation where none of the ratings are checked. But for the assignment, we've been told that the movie's endpoint should correspond to the situation. Where all of
but we're forcing it. It's not that we see something from params the first time. There is nothing.
No, absolutely. No, we're forcing it. But that's an explicit request in the assignment that we do that.
No, but I mean, it's an explicit request that we force it. But then shouldn't we redirect?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it's it depends where you could. That's then a choice. Like you could say that automatically that should be redirected, but at the same time we have then movies would not correspond to anything. So it's a question there about, are you asking for like brute force consistency across the whole RESTful model, excluding the fact that we have flipped the kind of relationship that movies goes to
yes.
I mean, could go either way on that. I see what you're saying. And if we want,
because I noticed that for instance, when that happens, it's never saved in the session. So I mean, anytime you reach that state, you always stuff it and then render, rather than stuff it and redirect.
Well, with the selected ratings, we always basically, if there's ratings in the session, we'll display those, and those ratings in the session, because we've previously ensured session consistency and param consistency, they will always be, the params will be there to match whatever these sessions are. In the first instance where we don't have a session, then we end up having this thing gets kind of forced in.
It gets forced in, and then nothing is written to the session.
No, but like this is the thing, because it's forced in, right? It doesn't actually correspond to a meaningful state of the session. Do you know what I mean? Like this is default behavior. In this setup here, like you can argue, like, let me say here, we can argue that for the pure restfulness, we can say that, like, you know, the movies here, that it should mean to no ordering and no rating selected, right? And then so we've got things like movies slash, and then I've done this, and then sort equals title. I mean that's obviously, you know, the sorting, and then we've got movies question mark, and we've got the rating, and that rating equals like PG or what have you there, and that corresponds to the you know, a filter on the thing. But so you could argue that you know, you should have explicit things like sort equals none, right, and is no sorting, right, and that, you know, if you go to movies, right, and you know, there's no sorting, if you're going to be really explicit about it, you may want to redirect to this and say, look, this is explicit, and then put this in the session, right? So similarly with, if we're saying that the default is that you know, all of them selected, so if we've got movies and we say that this is actually what we want in our behavior or our system, is we want no ordering and all ratings selected, then you can argue at some level that this should redirect to movies, and then question what we've got here, the rating with all the rate, also with sort equals none, and rating equals PG, and then, you know, whatever the other these different things, like so. I don't know, it's called D. I don't like so, but it's kind of, you know, given that they're also in the app, we're kind of we're sort of explicitly saying this corresponds to this, right? I mean, there isn't.
Okay, my point would be that the assignment, if that's the case, the assignment doesn't explain that that is an acceptable exception.
Right. I mean, and so then we're, so the exception, I mean, whether, I would say that the assignment itself, if we look at the Rails, is ambiguous on the point about that, basically. Yeah.
Well, certainly.
Like, and so then it becomes down to, you know, how we want to interpret restfulness, and how we want to, and personally, I could make arguments in both directions. I don't know that it matters that much. I mean,
well, it matters to the students because of the way it's graded. So, I mean, that's the only thing I would bring up.
Well, no, but then I don't know that it. I don't know, when you say it matters to the students because it's graded that way. Like, they're not going to be, whether or not it stuffs the session there or not, is not going to affect its grading, is it?
No, well, I'm just saying, I don't know how it's going to be this time around, but in the past, there were cases where students got points off when they were forcing things to be restful, and I don't know, the AutoGrader was looking for something else. And I wish I could remember the exact example, but I do know it had to do with this.
Go on, Richard.
No, I was, I mean, I was going to add practically nothing, and but sort of reiterate. It sounds like it's more of a design decision and interpretation, because it's not the way that I would think about it. And I do the logic class. It's not unrestful either way. It's just a question of when you interpret the URL that has nothing in it that corresponds to a particular state. And the question is whether the checking state is explicitly in there, or whether it's just, you know, by default. It's not. It really, the URL, as long as you understand the application behavior.
Oh, okay, but the way the book explains restfulness is that if you're going to, if you have to render something that the information isn't in the params hash, and you have to change it or stuff it or whatever, that you redirect. So I mean, you know, I'm just pointing this out.
Yeah. No. So,
well,
oh, go on, Richard.
No, I mean, I was just because in that case there is some state information that you need to change it to make the URL correspond to that.
Right, right. But I'm just saying
And
that's like the definition of unrestful.
In the case you're talking about, there is no state information. It's just like the way the app the app works when there's in that initial state when there's nothing specified.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be argued from my point of view. Yeah. It could be argued both ways. The assignment is ambiguous about the situation that you happen there. My sense is that while the AutoGrader, I think, is very sensitive to all aspects of this and the restfulness, I didn't think that the grader was saying when you so for example, in the system that I have here, the movies defaults to that showing, and that's what it expects. If the movies did do a redirect to that point and inserted all of this stuff, it's conceivable that
should fall out, right? It should fall out.
Fall out in what sense?
In other words, it should still be consistent with what the AutoGrader is looking for.
Yeah. In principle, although I don't know, I mean, that then comes down to the argument of, it's clear, if the app required that when you went to the movie's endpoint, that corresponded to no ordering and no ratings selected, right? If that was the case, then the whole app could be consistent in that the state in terms of ordering and ratings selected is completely unambiguous for every endpoint. However, the app has been explicitly said there's an exception that when you go to the movie's end, I mean, this is these are two. This is spec 1, right, which is not how it's spec'd, and then we have here spec 2, which is that we have we have no ordering, but we have all ratings selected. So if you said that this is what this endpoint corresponds to, which is what the specification of the homework asks for, then arguably you shouldn't redirect in this case, because in particular, it's the specification 2 also includes the fact that you should not allow there to be a case where no ratings are selected. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
yeah.
So,
it just occurred to me. I think I remember what the situation was. Okay, and of course, your code is consistent in your interpretation. I believe that my code is consistent in my interpretation, but I believe what the student did is that in the case where there was nothing in the params hash for setting a ratings, and then you interpret it as, okay, then set all ratings. I think what they were doing is then stuffing the session with all ratings to remember the setting, but they rendered because it was like the default situation. Does that make any sense at all?
Possibly. I mean, I would say there that in the absence of the specific student's code and so on, we're not going to make much more progress than that. It's definitely an interesting case. And I mean, I think the action item for me there going forward on this assignment is I can see how that there's two interpretations of this. And the interesting question is, will the AutoGrader penalize one and not the other? And if that's the case, then we need to clean that up. We need to either make
I think the assignment
more specific. Go on.
Yeah, I think your interpretation is completely consistent. I mean, I think your code is completely consistent with respect to your interpretation. But I think because I've run it with cases where I've given it my interpretation and it does accept it, but I see why, because everything is consistent in either case. All right. But now I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking, I think there was like the student was on one hand handling it as a default case, and then on the other hand handling it as something that caused him to have to set the session. So I think that was the problem. No, that you can't try to do both at once, if that makes any sense.
Maybe so. Yeah.
Anyway, it's I'm sorry to spend so much time, but it is much clearer to me, and I would like to know, what the like the general default case would be considered for, you know, the idea of keeping it restful. But at any rate, it's a nit. It would only really happen before someone started clicking on things. As soon as they start clicking on things, then you're going to have the session set, and you know, you're going to have stuff in there from then on.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and I think we as we see, like as I went through there, once you've started clicking, you actually end up being unable to get back to
Yes,
this state,
exactly.
This state where,
Mm-hmm.
so like if we go here, like, and I do a refresh,
Yeah, you can't get back there.
It knows that if I take one off and then I put it back in, and then if I come here and then I refresh, see now
Mm-hmm.
in this state we've got movies and all the things. I mean,
yeah,
to be honest,
yeah.
you know, when I'm on you know, sites like Amazon and so on, what have you, I think it's fairly rare to see all these things. I mean, I would say that the user experience trumps restfulness every time. You know, it's like I'm far less concerned about restfulness than I am about making sure that it appears consistent to the user. But it's yeah, I mean, certainly given the fact that once you've started poking around, that subsequently you end up in this state where all of them selected now corresponds to, like, once we've had them all go into the session once. Wait a second, how many ratings have I got here? It's going rating 1, 2, 3, 4. That's funny, isn't it? Because well, I'm just noticing here that you know, I had a situation where I was kind of like I had one of them on. No, I've only got 4 ratings, haven't I? Sorry, I was like miscounting. I think there were 5. No. We are getting into the state subsequently where movies is always, you know, you can't get back to that /movies that you were on. It's kind of a meaningless. So that there's a kind of inconsistency in as much as, I mean, it's inconsistency as much as that sometimes when you go, like the very first time that you go here, it's going to be movies / and then as soon as you start doing things, and then until the cookie,
it's never that again.
It's never that again. And so yeah, it would be it would have a strong consistency if it always had that there, and that would be a relatively minor change in the code to achieve. And it would certainly be interesting to see if the grader picked that up. Okay, yeah,
right. But
it seems like it should be one way or the other, but to see it one way at the beginning and then never that way again, and then it's always
I think that's a design decision as to how one wants to interpret that, because I mean, I could have 2 states going to the same page. There's nothing, you know, there's nothing like inconsistent about that. And you know, the way that I look at it is, I as a human can look at that URL and know what the page is going to look like. It's not like there's some sort of hidden, you know, hidden state information that's not there.
Go on.
Thing. I mean, this is from a historical point of view. I remember the first time that I took the course, the specification was different or opposite of this. Do you have that recollection, Sam? And I'm just that amuses me a little bit, because when we first did it, it's like, well, if there are no rating, you know, the default is if there are no ratings selected, then show nothing. And I thought that was okay. That was fine, and that's the way I implemented it. And then when it moved into edX, then okay.
I mean, I think I'm not sure that I necessarily. Well, that was right. You're talking about when it was in Coursera, and very possibly there was a change. I mean, to have nothing displayed as the default view is like, that's like logically consistent, but it's senseless from a user interface.
Well, and in fact, I don't know that I agreed with that. In other words, as I went in and as I unchecked, in some ways I would get fewer and fewer movies. And I actually didn't like it that when I unchecked the last one, all of a sudden all my movies appeared. And that was the change in the specification. No big deal, but it may have even been related to the you know.
Yeah. I just want to be sure I understand, you know, like our goals here, because the students every semester have questions about this.
Yeah, I mean,
and they notice they notice that, you know, it starts out one way and then it's perennially the other way, and is that, you know, is that the right way, and, you know, what does that say about restfulness? So, you know, I mean, it's just, it gives rise to a lot of conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think and this is there. I'm just going to find,
as long as the AutoGrader isn't giving them like inconsistent or problematic issues.
I'm just wondering here if we've got, see, what we don't have in this assignment, but we have in some of the, we don't have a list of learning objectives on this assignment. And I think, you know, that's ambiguous. What I would also say is, I think from an academic side, one comes at these things from saying like, oh yes, we want the students to understand restfulness, that we want, you know, like, as a person who's been working in academia and industry and so on, like, don't look for a consistent theory to underpin what you're doing. Like, like restfulness is a concept and you can understand it fine. Trying to make your app perfectly restful is insane. Trying to make your app have 100% test coverage is insane. Trying to follow any kind of, to perfectly understand something and then perfectly implement it in the real world is just, you're going to create lots and lots of problems for yourself. I mean, I think I take the attitude with it that I think the healthiest attitude from the point of view of the students is not, here it is like, there's a grader and I need to get it to work to pass the grader, and the grader is setting some specification. Now we can like adjust, like, obviously we want to avoid all of these situations where students get confused because the messages from the grader are difficult to interpret or they're logically inconsistent. But I think the biggest thing is back to the beginning of, and how can we do it? It's disavowing the students of this, like, the world doesn't make sense. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think, you know, how can we get children and young people and people understand that it doesn't make sense? Well, they're going to be very tenacious in holding on to the idea that somehow it should make sense. And by understanding things, that they can then kind of make guaranteed progress. But yeah, definitely more to look into it. We're kind of out of time. There was another issue that you've detailed related to the
the BDD cucumber assignment. It still has that orphan migration, which causes issues when they.
Right, and you're saying it was removed from one area, but it's yeah. So it's removed from one area, but not from another. So I did spend some time on the side.
So it was
from one area, but so there's some other area that it still exists in, and it also needs to be removed from there.
It used to be in assignment 5, and that's fixed. But now assignment 4 has an orphan migration, and what happens when they start to run the tests, they get all kinds of weirdness about how many like how many records are in there. I'm not quite sure why one interferes with the other, but what's consistent is the problem they see.
Yeah, and so what I need in order to fix this is to be able to work out precisely where we're. So you're saying this is students doing the BDD cucumber assignment that are experiencing the problem?
Yeah, and it's the same one that's in issue 10. Like when you go to issues, there's 3 issues there. Click on it, and there's should be base code is out of date. That's it. Right. And then if you go down, you can see that there's the schema points to one migration that isn't even there.
Yeah, no, I remember the detail. I remember the details of that particular issue, which I thought we had addressed, and obviously it's still hanging over. But so
and I also have how to fix it.
Okay, but so the issue then is, I think if we look at the oh gosh.
Yeah, and Bill added some test code in the feature file, which I don't think makes any sense.
So hold on. So I think that the orphan migration that we the first place that we encountered it was in this, like,
that's the wrong number. Look at the schema.
So sorry, no, just hold on, Rose. I'm just recalling for myself where I think we fix it in HW7 unit test.
Look at the schema.
But remember, I'm in the one, so in the schema, yeah.
Oh, now, see, that's not what I see when I go there.
So just hold on there.
I'm sorry.
Hold on.
I'm
So
sorry.
I'm looking at the moment at the acceptance test unit cycle one, which is where I think we'd addressed the issue.
Yeah.
And so now I'm going to go to BDD Cucumber. So here, and so if we have a look now, so DB here, we've got the migration looks right, and then you're saying like if I look in the schema here, yeah,
it's pointing somewhere else.
In what sense is it pointing somewhere else?
Version 20120130161449 instead of 38.
Yeah, I don't know that the schema. I mean, this version number gets updated. It's a bit like a sort of.
Yeah, but the migration for it should still be there, and it's not.
You're saying,
I mean,
that there's a mismatch between the migration number and the schema number.
And it seems to always cause problems.
Okay, that is good.
When we fixed it in homework 5, then it got rid of the problem we were having.
When you're saying homework 5, you mean the acceptance test unit cycle?
Right. So that cleared that up, but it's still here in the Cucumber BDD Cucumber.
Okay, so in that, so in here. What have we got? So in the migration, no, I thought part of the problem we've got here is that we've got the development SQLite thing in here. That certainly shouldn't be in there, but so here you're saying that the schema number here is corresponding successfully to the migration number here.
Yeah, I mean, when I do migrations, I'll see the migration number. Then if I migrate again, I see another migration number, and the schema always points to the latest migration. But if the migration file isn't there, then that's a problem.
Right. Okay. So what we've got here is that the so the schema thing, which I was thinking was just some sort of hash, is actually corresponding very specifically to the date of the migration. So specifically the issue that we have then that we would like to address is would be sensibly that if we this again here, right, it has the same migration, would be to go into the schema and ensure that the schema has the same, like this.
I don't think you can just change it like that. I mean, I had to go in. Can you look at in the issues, go down and see what I did?
I'm afraid we've run out of time now. I have just made that change. I mean, whether that fixes the problem, I don't know.
I don't think it will.
Well, we will see. I've got to go into another meeting now. But since you've left all of the information in the issues and in the Slack, I'll review that and see if we can find some way of addressing it.
Okay, because it was an easy fix. It was the same fix we applied to homework 5.
Well, the funny thing was, I thought that what we had, the homework 5 thing that I was remembering, which may be a completely different issue, was something where there was like, some extra like migration that added a load of extra. There was a migration that added a load of extra records, and they were like added during the run of the grader, and then the number of records was incorrect, and this, that, and the other. This schema number being out of whack, it seems like at least is a different thing. I'm not saying that wasn't something that was also fixed in the other one, but I have no memory of fixing the schema number, particularly in the acceptance as unit cycle one, although I totally agree with you that the schema number and the migration number do match each other, and that's an inconsistency in this one. But yeah, I'll have to sit down calmly and work through everything.
Okay, because I have copies of what happened in homework 5 if I could find them.
Yeah.
And
I look forward to seeing if you can find them. Yeah. Well, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to.
It's even the same number.
I'm gonna have to wrap up right now. Yep. And I'll see you guys same time. It seems like this time works, which is great. And yeah, I'll follow up with you on these various issues in email. See you in a bit. Bye for now.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks. Bye for now.